You know, in reality, there's no way that you can understand where Western reason came from unless you understand what these oracles of the dead were, because that's where it all originated. And the Oracle of the Dead is a subterranean facility on the Acheron River near the little town of Kanaliki, directly below Albania in the northwest Greece province of Greece known as Epiros. And it was a subterranean institution where they took you through a procedure that culminated in an underground apparition chamber where, after having undergone a month of preparation by talking about a deceased loved one that you had lost and so on, that you would go into this apparition chamber in complete darkness except for torchlight on the walls, and you would gaze down into a polished bronze cauldron that was filled with water and, I suspect, probably a layer of olive oil over the top. And under those circumstances, many people do see full-color, three-dimensional, moving apparitions or visions. And I have recreated this many times, beginning in 1990, and taken many hundreds of people through this procedure. And it does work in a high percentage of the cases. People actually do see apparitions of the deceased. I first got interested in this in 1962 as a first-year student at the University of Virginia, thanks to the best professor I ever had, Marcus Mallet, who introduced me to this wonderful world of the ancient Greeks. And in Book 11 of the Odyssey, there's the story of Odysseus's voyage to this very place where we are today, where he went through prescribed rituals and entered the underworld and visited with the spirits of the deceased. When I was reading Plato's Republic during my first year of undergraduate study at UVA, I got to that wonderful allegory that stands out in the mind of anyone who's ever read it, the allegory of the cave, talking about an underworld environment where people were kind of locked in, and they saw images cast on the wall, and as Plato tells us, visions of humans and other things in water and as shadows on the walls. Well, in commenting on this setup, Socrates says, "As for me, I agree with Homer, and I would rather be a landless man, a slave of another, than to opine with them and live that life." Well, I was curious as to where in Homer that was, and I found it in Book 11 of the Odyssey, the underworld scene of the Oracle of the Dead, in which Achilles says those very words to Odysseus. As for me, I would rather be a landless man, a slave of another, on the surface of the earth than to opine with these people and to live down here. So the gist of this is that as much as it will perhaps stir up and offend the sort of standard stodgy Platonists, it's my opinion that the setting that Plato had in mind for his allegory of the cave was this very institution here in Epiros that we visited today. And I think that there's a lot of other contextual evidence for that, which I could give in a more extended presentation. But here we are today in Plato's cave. And I've been here I don't know how many times now, kind of lost track, but it continues to be a very haunting place. Because this is part of our history. The allegory of the cave is one of the most powerful passages of world literature. And not just the allegory of the cave, but many of the stories with which all Western people are familiar with from the time of childhood. The story of Sisyphus and his rolling the boulder up the hill and so on. Sisyphus was the king of Ephyra, this little ancient Greek town which is right at the Oracle of the Dead. And Orpheus, the magical musician, the Greek version of Elvis. In a very real way, I think we can't understand ourselves until we understand this Oracle of the Dead and the formative role it played, along with these other ancient Greek oracles and the earliest philosophers, played in the origin of the way we think. Every time you use the notion of a definition, which you probably do quite often, really that's Socrates in you, because he formulated this idea. Every time you have the thought, which is part of our culture, that number is a necessary element in science, that science tries to give a mathematical formulation of the world. That's Pythagoras. That idea in you is the remnant of Pythagoras. So here we are revisiting ancient Greece, which means in a way probing into layers of ourselves that are there, but that we just don't think about that much, and bring to our mind the great significance of this civilization for the world that we live in.